Hey, what's going on, everyone? Joe Menza here, and I'm doing one from a photo. I'm not showing the photo because I did get it from another group, reference photos. But the idea there is they provide photos you could work from, and you can paint their photo with, and sell your painting, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where this idea is coming from. This is from the Oregon coast. So it's a coastal scene painting. I'm working with 400 Strathmore. This is the cold press, 140 pound. And what I do with this paper is, and a lot of the non 100% cotton is I do a Chinese white coating and I let it dry. Sometimes I let it dry overnight, but that's what I did here, and it provides a little bit more of a stable surface, something for the paint to bite into. Almost kind of like a primer, I guess you can look at it. Now what I've done here is I've taken some ultramarine blue. I'm mixing it with a little bit of white also, just to kind of lighten up this sky and try to come up with just kind of a subtle sky here. So what I'm doing is I'm really just kind of laying in the basics. This is sort of a rocky area that cuts around the bay. And then on top of this area, there's like grass that is, and trees, whatever, is grown on top and sort of running down the side. And then you have the water flowing in through the bay. So that's the general idea here. So I'm just coming in with some basic colors here. A little shadow color here. I'm going to end up blending this together. This is a red iron oxide that I use, this brownish color, and something I haven't used before, so I thought, what the heck, I will throw this in here. And then I've got an indigo, which is kind of like my go-to darker mixer. I almost prefer indigo over Payne's Gray these days. They're very, very similar. Your mileage may vary depending on the brand. I'm using like a Blix house brand. Now, I'm making up some greens here using the yellows and blues, and the idea is to vary this up, work it wet and wet, and kind of let this melt together and create sort of this top to this little hillside here until I keep painting until I get it to look the way that I want to. So here we go with this. And this is obviously has got to look like a rocky structure. So it's going to take a little bit of extra work here. Working in just a little bit more white up on top. Kind of blending in that sky a little bit. And I've sped this up a little bit. I hope this doesn't throw you too much. But if I didn't, this video would be too long. It's a little longer than I normally take, but I really wanted this one to come out. And when I work from photos as opposed to imagination, I tend to take a little longer. I don't know if it's because I'm trying to get the details or whatever, but, obviously you want to try to lay it in as quickly as possible. But sometimes you get one and it's a nice photo and you want it to look very nice. You want to give it your all kind of a deal. So, you want to do that without fussing is the obvious goal. So little by little, we get the main structure in here. And we need to start adding some water. I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine with a little bit of phthalo blue. And I'm not going to get too fussy with it because I'm going to come back with some white. And I've got a new white that I'm working with that was recommended by a couple of people in our Ron Ransom painting group on Facebook. And it's called Bleed Proof White. It's by that D.P.H. Martin. They make some different products, and it really is a good white. It's not like gouache. It's not like Chinese white where it vanishes into the paint surface. As it dries, it seems to kind of hold and stay. So I think it's going to take a permanent place in my toolbox. So they call this, like when you're putting in the main elements early on. And you'll see this and you'll wonder how it's, how a lot of people conceptualize when they're doing a painting. They call that blocking it in. And they'll take the largest shapes and they'll kind of just put in the brightest colors and sort of lay the foundation of the painting and then build up from there. Use your lighter colors and then add your darks and details and textures and all that. As for me, I keep painting until I get it to somewhere where I'm kind of happy with it. So there were some rocks in this photo in the bay. I've kind of simplified it into just a large rock, just a couple of rocks. I didn't want to overdo, little individual rocks or anything. And plus I wanted to kind of keep the size, so I just made one large rock instead of three smaller ones. And I think it helped keep the perspective, the scale correct. So here now I've put a little bit more brown layer on top. I'm going to try scraping this out to kind of create these rocky structure here with the grasses coming down. A lot of times when you're going into these and you haven't painted something like this, and you'll have this when you're painting, is there's uncertainties. You kind of have an idea based on previous paintings, like how could I do this? And you're not always 100% sure something you do is even going to work. So in that sense, every painting it's an exercise in practice. It's an exercise in risk taking. There's always that little nervousness when you go to paint, and I don't know really what the cause of that is, because there's not a lot to risk other than really like time. But a lot of people who will go into a painting, you have this sort of fear factor. I hope I don't mess this up. I hope it comes out right. And sometimes it's turning out well, and then you ruin a painting, with something you've done. But just take your time and take advantage of, certain outcomes. Follow the paint. And as you can see here, I like the way the rocks are looking with the scraping. So I'm just going to capitalize on that, and I'm doing the grassy areas up on top here. A little lemon yellow. And now I'm going to start putting in the foliage down here, down below, and using brighter colors to sort of catch the light. As this is the area closer to the viewer, it should have a little bit more detail. I've worked in a little phthalo yellow-green here too, just to catch some little bit brighter of a color. Now also, the other thing is, as I'm doing these paintings, it's always in my mind, like, how can I make this into a teachable process? I want to leave room for the artistic process, for things to unfold without this becoming too methodical. And there are ways to achieve certain things, but there should also be a little room left over to allow for the artistic process without there becoming, okay, you pull down here, you go left here. When I don't want it to become too mechanical and leave out the creative process, but there needs to be a way to teach it so that as I go along on this journey and you with me and I show you things, I can say, okay, here's this and here's that. There's one particular artist that was out there, Nita Engel, and she had a really, unique way of painting with running and spray bottles and this and that. The problem is that it's something that looked very difficult to teach. It's like it took years and years and years to get this down, but it's something she perfected. And it would take years for you to perfect as well. Whereas you have something like the Bob Ross method where, within a very short time, few paintings, you can kind of have an idea and feel like you're having some progress. I think you can have that in watercolor too, and that's where the Hake brush comes in. That's why Ron Ranson, pioneering sort of the no fuss, no muss Hake brush, is a really great way for beginners and those who want to paint more loosely to watercolor, so that you can enjoy the medium and sort of just block in the big shapes and have a good time with it, rather than using little tiny brushes, being meticulous, having to do every little detail. So now comes the fun part for me. I've wet this down a little bit, and I'm going to add some of that bleed-proof white. And I'm just going to try to, show some little waves and some little water movement. And I don't really have a teachable moment on this other than, I'm just kind of going with my gut to some degree to say, oh, this looks right or that looks right. And if you want to join the group Reference Photos for Artists on Facebook, it's a great group that a lot of people just post regular photos they've taken here and there on vacation. And it's basically you have permission to use them, sell your paintings, and so forth. And if you're having trouble finding good, reference material, it's a great place. I've used sites like Pixabay and different things like that. The problem with those is those photos that they take are very artsy. They're very artistic. They're taken by, super talented photography people. And so it doesn't really help translate into, for me, like an artistic photo. You take something, it's like what you do is never going to compare really to the photo. They've used different lenses, filters, this and that. I'd rather just have some regular photos that I can dress up and I can put an artistic spin on without looking through that lens. So the main thing here is I don't want to cover up all this blue that I have. I just want to accent it with the bleed-proof white. So I should probably quit when I'm ahead. Just kind of scraping a little more of the top of these rocks so I don't lose too much there. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the way this one turned out. There's never a perfect painting. I mean, there really never is a perfect painting. This one here, in comparison with the photo, I think I did really as well as I possibly could with it. Maybe a couple little minor things here and there, but this is probably one of the few where I got to the end and I'm like, that turned out pretty well, and people that I showed it to enjoyed it too. So it's nice to have those successes, but you're not going to have success 100% all the time. You're going to have where you get to the end, I don't know if I like it, I don't think this, and I don't think that, and don't be hard on yourself. In our group, we have people that they just, I don't understand why I'm not progressing, I don't understand. You are, it may not translate always onto the paper, but and I stress having fun. You're not going to become, if you could become the greatest artist who ever lived overnight, everyone would do this. And it does take some work. And you have to enjoy the journey, you have to enjoy the process. And if you don't, if you find yourself tedious or getting frustrated all the time, you're going to get frustrated occasionally. But if you find yourself getting frustrated all the time, you have to kind of evaluate your role in this hobby, because it shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be like that. You might have to look at other methods or other means or maybe even other mediums. It's challenging. It's challenging with watercolor for the simple reason that what you put on the page when it's wet is not necessarily how it's going to look when it's dry. And you have to kind of anticipate that and leave a little room for varying. When you work with oil paints, what you put on, it pretty much looks the same when it's dry. The same with acrylics. So when it comes to watercolor, there's that differential between what it looks like when it's wet and what it looks like when it's dry. That's why you have to allow your painting to dry, walk away, and then come back and you can make little, detail changes. Okay, so for the rest of the video is just little details here and there. I'm going to let you watch the rest of the process. If you don't, if you've seen enough, you want to skip to the end and see how it looks in its frame and its matte, go ahead. But from here on in is just my little finishing details. And I'll see you at the end of the video. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I'm going to put a couple of little birds up in here, and then we're going to look at it a little more up close. And here it is in the virtual frame. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate all your support. Take care.